My name is Connor Hazen, and I'm a senior at Telluride. So in this summer, I went down and studied astrophysics at ASU. So I worked with Evan Scanapico, who has a PhD in physics from Berkeley. And he has a couple of grad students down there he's mentoring, and he was a great guy. I really loved him. All right, so what I did. So I was working with star formation rates in galaxies. So what we were studying is we'd find the emission lines from atoms, and we'd study the formation rates in these galaxies, and we were trying to figure out why there's such a drastic change in these rates. So the first thing we would do is when you observe data, we would observe it, but then we need to be able to model it. So we had two programs to do that. The first program, which is called Cloudy, and then our second program, which was called Flash. So Cloudy is a more simplistic program. It's good for modeling simple things, but it has less parameters so you can input. So the first thing I did is I graphed two nebular emission lines. So a nebular emission line, it's when an electron is excited in an atom, it jumps shells, and when it jumps shells, it releases a very specific wavelength of light. So what I was graphing is that wavelength of light versus a more constant thing. So you'd get a ratio. So I'm graphing two different ratios, and it followed the observed data pretty closely. It was a little off, but we were fine with that considering our parameters were not exact. All right, so then our next thing I did is I was trying to see if Flash would be able to model the data. So Flash is a program it's really amazing. It's run on a group of servers that they talk to each other. So you put in the parameters for each section of the galaxy, and then they talk to each other, and it changes as it runs. So it's actually very accurate. So the problem is it didn't work for ours. As you can see, the data on the far left, that is our observed data, and that is what we were trying to match. And the data on the right is our data, and it does not follow the lines. So I had to figure out why. I mean, this really confused us. Flash has been proved to work. It's very consistent. So why is it not working for our galaxies? So what I discovered is that we were missing spectral lines. So our galaxies were too dense and too hot, and so the electrons, instead of jumping one shell, they'd jump two or three. And then we couldn't observe certain lines, which seemed to suggest that there was less of the element present, when in fact we just couldn't see it. So that's what I was graphing, and so once I was able to fix that, I just changed the parameters a little bit. We then tried to change the turbulence. So there's two different theories for why star formation rates in galaxies change it. And my professor's theory is that there's turbulence. So galaxies far away from us, which is thereby back in time, that those galaxies were more turbulent. So we'd graph them with many different turbulences, and if the galaxies nearby us matched the graphs with a turbulence of 0, and the galaxies far away matched the high turbulence galaxies, then we were on his way to proving his theory. And so we actually were able to graph that data, and it matched, and he went and presented it in August at a conference. All right, so why I wanted to do Pinhead. I've heard about Pinhead. It's a big program in our town. I've always known about it. I actually did a mentorship with them in the beginning of my 11th grade year. I was studying 3D printing and modeling. And then I've also just talked to seniors who've done Pinterns, and they all had great things to say about it, and I was really excited. So I went to, as I said, Tempe. It was really hot there. It's really, really hot. I showed up on the first day, it was 110. I was like, oh, this is gonna be rough. And then at night, got down to 105. Never really went below that. That's a day I took a picture, it's 112. I think there was some humidity of like 70%. It was really hot compared to Telluride. But I really loved it there. I lived with a host family down there who actually lived really close to the university, so every day I could just walk to my lab. They were actually really great. They showed me around. One of my favorite things is they brought me to the botanical gardens, which was a welcomed escape from the heat. And yeah, overall I really love Tempe. I think it's a great small town, and it's a great community. So my final thoughts. Pinhead, it was great. I went down there, I learned a lot of new things about astrophysics. Some things I really enjoyed, and some things sort of changed my perception about the field, which is great. You don't have to enjoy everything you do down there. I think it's great to know what you want to do, and now as I'm moving forward to leaving Telluride and going out and studying, it's nice to know what I want to do and what I don't want to do. So what I'd recommend to future Pinterns is take every opportunity. You're going down there to study one field, but you can learn so much more I learned about geology, biology. You talk to people and they will tell you things. And yeah, talk to people. I went in there and he told me to graph 400,000 data points of a galaxy. I didn't really know how to do that. Can't really do that in Excel. So I had to learn how to code in Python, which was pretty interesting. I'd taken a class, but I missed most of it. And yeah, so I taught myself Python, but I still couldn't get it to work. And I asked a grad student, and he fixed it within like 5 minutes. So just ask them. They want to help you. And instead of struggling for a week like me, just ask them and you can get a lot more done. So I'd like to thank Pinhead. I'd like to thank the whole board. I'd like to thank my professor, Evan, and Miss Cornell. She helped arrange things with the professor. And I'd really like to thank all of you guys for coming out tonight and giving us money and supporting. Thank you.